With Hashem's loving grace, welcome to Rebbe Nachman's Tales. Tonight, we begin the clever one and the simple one. It's one of my favorites, and one of David's too. We hear the theme song we wrote about it, Baruch Hashem. And it's a tale that teaches us so much about life. And like all of Rebbe Nachman's tales, the clever one and the simple one is a kaleidoscope. Superficially, it's a guide to happiness and success. Just how to be happy. And on a deeper level, it signifies the battle between simple emuna and intellectual sophistication. So today's lesson introduces us to our two protagonists, the simple one and the clever one. At the end, we'll try to have time for questions. Now, what we plan on doing is like this, since everyone, first of all, get everyone familiarized with Rebbe Nachman's tale, because there's no point going in depth interpreting it until we get to know. So this will probably take us 2 lessons just to tell the story. We're going to tell the story with a little bit of direction, as we see some of the salient points that we should pay attention to, not to forget, because we're going to need to know them afterwards. And then afterward, we'll go back in-depth learning. But one thing, with Hashem's loving grace, I promise everybody that when we finish this lesson, you're going to be a lot happier, because this lesson is applied emuna. Rebbe Nachman said, my fire will burn until Mashiach comes. And what it is, Rebbe Nachman says, when you won't be able to understand my teachings, my discourses, my Torah, then I'm going to tell you stories, and you'll understand my stories. This is Rebbe Nachman says, that this Rebbe Nachman's stories can be understood on a basic level, that like you would tell an 8-year-old at a bedtime story. And it could be on a very deeper level for someone who's well-versed in Gemara and Kabbalah. But we're going to stay with the basic level, how it affects us. Okay, so we're about to learn the clever one and the simple one, and go back and with the replay, God willing, we'll have it up right afterward. Right, we edit it, and listen to it a couple of times, be familiar with it, and then you'll be able to appreciate it much more. So once there were 2 homeowners in a city who had great wealth. These 2 homeowners, they were very wealthy. They had large houses, and they had 2 sons. In other words, each had a son. And the 2 children learned together in the same schoolhouse. We call it Yiddish a cheder. Now, one of them was a chacham. Use a few Hebrew and Yiddish words to give us Rebbe Nachman's flavor. This was a smart, he was clever, smart, sophisticated. That's a chacham means all these 3, okay? Or wise, depends. There are different types of chacham, but could be all 3. We're going to see which type of chacham, which type of clever or wise or sophisticated Rebbe Nachman was talking about in the course of the story. And the other was a tam. Tam is one of the 4 at the Passover Seder table. That's the simple one. The simple one, okay, very simple. That doesn't mean he was fool or foolish, heaven forbid. He just had a simple intellect and no sophistication and no deep wisdom. Maybe the psychologist would say he's got about a 95 IQ. Where the clever one would have like a 135 IQ, really big difference. So even though one was chacham, one was clever, wise, and sophisticated, and the other was tam, the other was simple, they nevertheless loved each other very much because their parents were, their fathers were best friends, and they learned together. Now came a time when the 2 balabatim, the 2 householders, the estate owners, their luck declined. And they gradually lost their money. Finally, they lost everything, and they became destitute. And they had nothing left but their houses. So as the sons began to grow up, the fathers told them, sorry, boys, we don't have enough to sustain you. You're going to have to fend for yourselves. You have to go and work. Learn a trade and go and work. So that is the introduction to our story. We learned 2 fathers. Now we leave the fathers, we don't talk about them anymore. And now we're introduced to the simple one and the clever one, but they learn trades. Okay, so the first, Rebbe Nachman talks about the simple one. The simple one, he was very simple. So he learned an apparently simple trade. He learned to be a shoemaker. So the chacham, with the great intellect, the smart one, he had a very great intellect. And we continue referring to him. The tam is the simple one, and chacham is the right one. That's what Rebbe Nachman calls in Hebrew, a tam v'chacham. And by this way, gradually learn a few of the Hebrew ideas and Rebbe Nachman's vocabulary, because it's got a special flavor to it. Okay, so this was very discerning, very astute, and a very quick learner. So he didn't want to learn a common trade. His friend is becoming a shoemaker, a cobbler. That's a low totem, low peg in society. He wanted to do something that's distinguished. So he decided he didn't know what to do. He'd travel around the world and find what to do. He'd travel around the world. Rebbe Nachman once tells us that, we see there's different wisdom in all different the world. And one of his discourses, he says that by traveling around the world, a person becomes smart because you learn different types of wisdom that each one of the nations has. So as he was going to the marketplace, we're talking about the sophisticated one, he saw a large wagon with 4 horses, and they were speeding through, and he called out to the merchants, "Hey, where are you from?" They're from a little village in the shtetl, in the village in Poland, and they said, "We're from Warsaw." Warsaw, that's the big capital city. He says, "Are you going to Warsaw?" And they said, "Yes." And he says, "Maybe you need workers." And they saw that he was astute, motivated, he looked intelligent, and he looked like he was well fit. So they accepted him to give a. So he traveled with them and served them very well on the way. He became an apprentice to them, and he served them. When they arrived in Warsaw, he was still a brilliant person and what we call a bar Havana. He understands very quickly. And so he says like this, look, he said everything, he analyzes every situation philosophically with his intellect. There's no such thing as simple decisions. He says, since I'm already in Warsaw, why should I remain with these simple merchants? In other words, he used them, he served them, he worked his way from the shtetl, from the village to get to Warsaw. Now he's Warsaw. He says, maybe there's a better place. Okay, maybe we can find something better. He doesn't yet have anything better. But with the sophistication, he thinks that, oh, he's obviously smarter than these merchants. And there's obviously more intelligent merchants than these merchants and more successful merchants than these merchants. And they're probably merchants that are driving a fancier carriage. And maybe they have a chauffeur-driven carriage with the drivers, and they're better, more successful. So maybe I should look for them. So he says there's a better place probably. So I'm going to go search and see. So he walked around the marketplace and he began to investigate and inquire about the men who had brought them and whether what's their reputation like? Are they honest? Are they capable? Are they successful? So he started asking about the people that brought him from the village to Warsaw. And he wanted to find out if there would be a better place, possibly a better employment opportunity than stay with these people. Well, the people that he asked them, he said, well, the people that brought him, they're honest people and they're good people to work for. But it's very difficult to be with them because their business dealings are in distant places. And the fun thing, there's 2 important things. Look what Rebbe Nachman is showing. Rebbe Nachman is showing us 2 important points. When you're doing business with someone, that they're honest, that is really, really meritorious in business, have some honest, and they're good people. They're upright people. But they travel far and wide. So there is 2 great big advantages and 1 disadvantage. The clever one, he continued, and he decided he'd leave them. And he noticed the clothing shop workers that they were going around the marketplace with all their customary charm. People that work for the clothing shop, they're dressed in their best, they're dressed very fine. He wasn't dressed so nicely. And he saw that their caps and pointy shoes and the rest of the affectations and the flair and their gait and their appearance, these guys were really flashy. So he, too, wanted to be sharp and discerning. He was already discerning, wanted to be sharp. And the occupation looked good to him. It looked very appealing. It had a lot of charisma, flash. So he said, why should he be with these merchants? And he's going to go, and it's pleasant. And it's a shop and it's local work and doesn't have to travel all day and night all around the world. So he went to the man who had brought him and he gave him praise and appreciation. I appreciate you for bringing me here. But he told him that it's not comfortable for him to be there. I prefer not to travel all around the world. And as for recompense for bringing you, I served you on the road and that's my salary. You're bringing me here, that's my salary. So they parted peacefully. And they parted amicably. And he went and now offered himself to the clothing store proprietor. So the way the servant says, the first one has to be hired for less and then do heavier work. So you start out on the bottom of the totem pole for minimum wages and you get the heaviest work because you're the new guy. So the proprietor used him for the very hard work. carrying the big packages and carrying merchandise off to the nobility and displaying the garments on extending arms. He had to carry like 10 garments on each arm and really weighed him down. He worked really hard. The work was very hard for him. It was physically hard. It was much worse. See, he left something, he got some good people and he left honest people, but he liked the traveling. So now, out of his sophistication, he thought he could do better. Now he probably doesn't travel, but now he's working much harder. Okay, so he needed to carry these garments. Sometimes the nobleman, the rich man, would have a mansion. He'd have to walk up 4 floors, no elevator, not in those days. And he'd have to walk up with these garments on his arms. And it was really hard for him. So he decided, since he was a philosopher, Rebbe Nachman is saying this touch-in-cheek. Remember, since he was a philosopher, Rebbe Nachman talks all through his Torah about philosophy, people, the wise guys, people that philosophize everything. Philosophy, just on the way, why Rebbe Nachman has his tongue-in-cheek, philosophy is the opposite of simple Emuna. Rebbe Nachman all the time disdains philosophy. Doesn't mean they're knowledge, but philosophers, they question about everything. It's what we call in Hebrew pilpil. They split hairs on every little thing, and they never get to what's called the tachlis, the final goal, final objective. They miss the final goal. So once again, Rebbe Nachman says he's a philosopher and he's a discerning person. Rebbe Nachman is saying this really satirically. And the clever man says to himself, what do I need this back-breaking fork for? This is not the point of the ultimate purpose to break my back. The ultimate purpose is to get married and make a living. Now, he's smart. He just made a proper comment that the ultimate to get married, make a living, have a family. And he says, no, I don't need to do that yet. So he's aware, it's the philosopher. This is the wise guy, the sophistication. He's aware that where a person has to go. A young man has to find a wife, settle down, get married, make a family, make a living. Okay, he's aware he has to do that. But no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. So what he does, he avoids moving forward in the direction of a goal. Rather than a goal, his goal is his own, he's wise, his own intellect, that he's smarter than everybody. We already see this now. He says, meanwhile, it would be better for me to travel, to visit countries, feasting my eyes on the world. Rebbe Nachman said it's okay to travel, to glean the wisdom of the world. But what does the sophisticated one, what the clever one want to do? He wants to feast his eyes on the world. By saying feast his eyes, he is motivated by bodily pleasures. Feast his eyes. Who said feast his eyes? Feast his eyes, that was when the snake tempted Eve to eat the apple, and says it was a delight to the eyes. He told her, feast your eyes on that apple. So what Rebbe Nachman is indicating here, that the clever one has got a root in the dark side. It's not in holiness. Because right away, as we learned last night on Moon Hour, it is the opposite flow. The flow is from the down to the up. That is, his body is going to subjugate his brain. And his brain is very strong. So body subjugate the brain, the body's animal urge is going to be very strong to subjugate his intelligent brain. So he went around the marketplace and he saw merchants on a large wagon. And he asked the merchants, where are you going? And they said, to Ligorna. Okay, Ligorna, maybe this could have been, Rabbi Nachman could have meant Livorno in Italy, or Lugano. It's kind of Ligorna, the way it came out in the press, it's a cross between Lugano and Livorno. It could be one of the two towns. And they took him there. He joined them. He says, would you take me there? They said, yes, come along. And from there, they went to Italy, and from there to Spain. So now he's apparently happy, he's seeing places, going things, seeing places. So meanwhile, many years passed, and he became even more knowledgeable on account of having been in so many countries. So he decided, now it's time to look at the ultimate purpose. After traveling for 4 or 5, 6 years, he says, maybe the ultimate purpose, maybe it's now time to find a trade, to take a wife. So he began to philosophize on what to do. Again, he's thinking in philosophy, not with simple logic, not with Emuna, not with what does Hashem want me to do. He's philosophizing, what is the best thing for me to do? And he's arguing with himself back and forth. So we can see he's like a spider weaving a web, and he gets entangled in his own web of intellect. So it seemed to him that he should learn to be a goldsmith. It's a major occupation. It's an esteemed craft. It's a nice craft, and it's very profitable. And when you are a goldsmith, you deal with high society because poor people don't buy gold jewelry. So since he was such a philosopher and such an intelligent man, again, Rebbe Nachman, he's really, if you can see, no, Rebbe Nachman is wiping the floor with the clever one already here at the beginning of the story, because all the time he's a philosopher. He's very clever. Says that again, it's like Hashem giving him rope, and he's hanging himself with his own intellect. What we call in the UK a highbrow, right? Very intelligent. He's more intelligent than a highbrow with one of the Whigs in the House of Lords. Okay, so since he was such a philosopher and such an intelligent highbrow, he didn't need to study the trade many years. In other words, usually a person apprentice himself by a goldsmith 2-3 years. In a quarter of a year, in 3 short months, he became a great craftsman, even more of an expert than the one who trained him. He was an apprentice for 3 months, and he became more of an expert than the person that trained him. So afterwards, he concluded, well, even though I have a trade, now he's already a recognized, certified goldsmith, and he can make beautiful gold jewelry, and he knows how to work with gold. Maybe that's not enough for me. Again, the philosophy. He's got a great profession. Like the world in front of you, you could have who knows, a chain of gold stores all over Europe and all over Switzerland, Italy, France, UK. No, he says, maybe that this profession is not enough for me. Sure, it's an important profession today, but maybe at another time, something else will be considered important. Look what he's saying here. He's thinking about today, he has prestige. But maybe someone tomorrow in a different profession will have more prestige than him. This he can't stand. This for him is murder. If there's anyone that he perceives as better than he is with his arrogance. Now, Rebbe Nachman was introducing us to the clever one's arrogance, that he's already trying to make sure that nobody can surpass him, not only today, but tomorrow and the next day. So he went ahead and decided, what could he do to even better than any goldsmith in the world? He's going to be a gem cutter. Because normally a goldsmith, if he makes like a diamond ring for a princess, he's got to go to the goldsmith, to the gem cutter to cut the diamond. He can make the ring. No, he's not going to do that. He's going to be able to do both. He's going to be able to do the gold and cut the gems. So he philosophically decided, even though I have 2 trades in hand, okay, because now even gem cutting, he also learned, would take someone else 3-4 years, 3 months. He learned to be an expert gem cutter in 3 months. So again, now that he's a gem cutter, now that he's a goldsmith, unbelievable talent and intellect off the charts. Right now it's at 135, maybe 140. Fantastic. And not only that, dexterous with his hands. He's got all this ability, all this tremendous God-given ability. But what's he doing with it? He's being mapalpil. He's doing philosophy with himself. He says, now, look what he says. Now he's got 2 trades in hands. He's got 2 diplomas, and he's got 1 for hands and good reputation. He says, well, maybe, who knows? Perhaps next year, neither of these trades are going to be important. So then what I'm going to do? So maybe I need to learn a craft that's going to be more important than this. What do we see here? We see that he's never satisfied. One thing with his sophistication and his philosophy, he is never, ever satisfied. So now he's got to do something else. So what does he do? He decided that he's going to learn something that everyone needs, something that is very prestigious. He's going to learn to be a doctor. He's going to learn medicine. So everyone needs a doctor. And doctors are always prestigious and they're esteemed. So the first thing he did is to learn Latin. Doctor needs to know Latin. That's the language and it's writing. And it's also, Rebbe Nachman says again, this is the wisdom of sophistry. In other words, you can't be a good philosopher if you don't know Latin. All right, so this too, on account of his brilliant mind, he mastered in a short time. A quarter year, again, learned to be a doctor, 4 years of medical school in 3 months. Everything learns in 3 months. A quarter year, and he became a big doctor, a philosopher, and an expert in the field of wisdom. Look at Rebbe Nachman. Again, Rebbe Nachman is tearing him apart. Rebbe Nachman says, expert in the field of wisdom. Maybe he said he became an expert pediatrician. He became an expert psychiatrist, expert gynecologist, an expert whatever. No, he became an expert in the fields of wisdom. Hey, sir, you learn medicine. Who needs your philosophy and your wisdom? Philosophy and wisdom, okay, the wise guy wisdom, that doesn't cure people. We see up till now that whatever the clever one does, he's never satisfied. He's never happy. He's always afflicted. He's always worrying. Maybe someone is going to come along and be better than him. Maybe someone is coming along and have more prestige than him. Maybe someone will be more respected than him. So after all this, the world, he's now a gemsmith. He's now a goldsmith. And he's a master physician. So he looks at the world and everyone in it with disdain. Look at all these simple, nothing people. For due to his genius, he was such a great craftsman, and he was wise, a doctor, and every person in the world was a nothing to him. It's absolutely nothing. So now he decided that he would accomplish his purpose and take a wife. So he said to himself, again, he's philosophizing with himself, if I marry here, who will know what become of me? In other words, he's now in a foreign country. He's in Italy or France somewhere, and he came from the village in Poland. He says, if I'm here, a great man, but nobody back home is going to know what happened to me. It's very important that the people back home know how great he is and how wonderful he is. So I'd rather go home and to my home that I left as a young boy. People will see how great I am. People will become me, and I'll marry back there. But I left as a young boy, but now I'm coming back like a hero. I'm coming back with such greatness. There's never been anyone in our village, in our country, and that has been so great as me. He's inflated and inflated and inflated and inflated with ego. That's ego. The gases of ego are inflected. They're choking. The gas is like a poison gas that wards off the oxygen. The gas of his ego is affecting his brain. So now he's not thinking at all logically. So he's not avoiding getting married. And you go, but maybe he's going now. By this time, he's in his 30s. He's down the road. And he's now decides to travel home. And he has tremendous afflictions on the way home. Tremendous suffering. Why? He was so worldly and so sophisticated, so refined. He didn't find a single lodging up to his standards, not a single inn or hotel, nothing met his standards. Nobody cooked food that was proper for him, and he was always suffering. The bed is not good, the food is not good, the sheets are not clean, the innkeeper, always something wrong with someone. No one could serve him. He was any less than King Farouk. Always unhappy. Now, we're going to put the clever one aside. I'm going to go back to the simple one. And let's tell the story of the simple one. Okay, the clever one, meanwhile, he's on the way home and he's very sad and afflicted and depressed and nothing satisfies him. Okay, now the simple one. The simple man learned to be a shoemaker. And since he was a simple person, he had to study a great deal until he got it, until he understood what to do. And even then, let's say if a normal person would be apprenticed to a shoemaker for half a year, even after 2 years of apprenticeship, 4 times, notice that the clever one, he became an expert in 1/4 the time. And 4 times the apprenticeship, the simple one, he doesn't yet know the trade. He's not yet adept in the trade because he doesn't have expertise in the trade. But right away at the beginning, even though he doesn't make a living, Mary makes a meager living, he took a wife, and he sustained himself from his work. He got away married right away. So we're talking about 12 years maybe have passed with the clever one. He's 12 years bound, maybe he's 30 years old now. We're flashing back 12 years that when he first left with the wagon to go to Warsaw, that here's the simple one is starting out. The simple one is 18. And he apprenticed himself, and he takes a wife before he's 20. Rebbe Nachman is not explicit about the timetable, but we're understanding from the story the timetable. He became apprentice shoemaker and didn't have complete expertise, and he took a wife, but he made a bare living with his craft. So since he was a simple person, not such an expert, so his livelihood came with a great deal of difficulty, and it was very limited. He didn't even have time to eat because he always had to work. always had to work. To make his meager living, he had no time to eat. So because he didn't have proficiency, and to get something done, he had to work all the time. So he was very diligent. He didn't have time to think. No thinking, and certainly no philosophy, just had to work. But I was working, he inserted the nail in a shoe, and he pulled through the cobbler's thread. And while he was working, he would take a bite, a piece of bread, he would eat. But his simple man's customary behavior was always happy. He's always had a smile on his face. And he was constantly full of happiness, had nothing but happiness. And with all the foods and all the drinks, and glad he would say to his wife, "My wife, give me something to eat," when he'd come home late at night. And she'd give him a piece of dry bread, and he ate it. Then he'd say, "My wife, give me the sauce with the mushrooms and the buckwheat groats." And then she'd give him another little piece of bread. He'd cut him another slice. And he ate in praise. He says, "Oh, my wife, how wonderful and tasty this sauce is. And this mushroom gravy and this delight, this delicacy." He's eating a piece of dry bread. But while he's eating a piece of dry bread, he imagines every single taste in the world. This is spiritual eating. What is Rebbe Nachman telling us here? Rebbe Nachman is telling this is the secret of the manna in the desert. That the manna in the desert was heaven-sent bread. Whatever a person wanted to taste, if your favorite meal was Chateaubriand, then you could taste Chateaubriand. And if your favorite meal was French onion soup and you're vegetarian, you take French onion soup. If your favorite meal was pizza, you take pizza. Whatever you tasted. This is the heaven-sent bread. So Rebbe Nachman is teaching us, despite that he's poor and he has nothing but dry bread, he tastes, this is the heaven-sent, it's heaven-sent bread because he tastes all the delights of the world. And he says how wonderful this is. With each dish he'd ask for, "Oh, my wife, let me have another piece of another slice of steak." She'd give him another piece of bread. "Oh, this is so wonderful. And how well prepared you prepared this. Perfect, medium rare, just the way I like it." And he would speak to her as if he ate that dish. You would listen to him, and he ate that medium rare rib steak. And this, he would truly feel the pleasure that a person would have in a fancy steak restaurant. He felt with this piece of dry bread. And all the foods he tasted that he wanted. Once again, Rebbe Nachman is saying that he is so blessed. In his blessing, it is the secret of the manna. And there's a blessing in Hebrew, a special blessing in Hebrew, that you should have sova be'isa, that you should have satiation in your dough, which means you bake one little bread, that the bread is enough to satiate the entire family. And a person could break a whole oven of bread and not be satisfied. So in his great, Rebbe Nachman says, tmimut, his simplicity. Tmimut is the quality of being tam. This is simplicity, but this is holy simplicity. This is not stupid simplicity. This is wholesomeness. This is holy naivety. Let's call it innocence. And this brought him to immense joy. So similarly would say, "My wife, let me have a drink of that German beer." And she'd give him a glass of water. And he said, "Oh, this beer is wonderful." And then he would summon, he says, "Let me have mead." Mead is a Polish drink. It's like a liqueur made out of honey. And she'd give him that. He says, "Oh," she gave him the water. And he prays it the same way. He says, "My wife, don't we have a bottle from Paris of kosher Merlot?" And she'd bring him a bottle of another glass of water. And he says, "Oh, what exquisite this Bordeaux wine is, the Bordeaux Merlot," and give wine. And whatever he tasted. He tasted the same delight, the same Garden of Eden in the simple water. So here we have the clever one who has really old piece of dry bread and a glass of water. And for him, it's every delicacy in the world. And juxtaposed, we just saw the clever one in the fanciest hotels that weren't good enough for him, and the best meals, not good enough for him, not cooked right, not did this, not satisfied. So this is a complete opposite. And the same thing that the simple one was with his food and his drink, that's why he was with clothing. He and his wife, they shared, Rebbe Nachman calls it a peltz. A peltz is the old Polish fur coat that people would go out of the house, and it's like an unfinished piece of fur. It's not a rough fur. It's like a peasant's fur coat. And he would say, my wife, I need to go to the market and give me my fine, my garment that I wear in the marketplace. She'd give him the old coat. And when he needed a fancy overcoat to go to synagogue Shabbat, my wife, give me my Beckett shirt. She'd give him the old coat. Wherever he went, the old coat. And he looked at this old coat, this old tattered fur coat called a peltz. For him, it was a Beckett shirt. It was his Shabbat silk coat. It was his Botany 500 suit. It was everything. And he would look and he says, how beautiful this suit is. I don't know what for many people have such a beautiful suit this is. And the same thing, he would go and ask for the kaftan when he'd go back to the synagogue, this a garment that we wear to the synagogue, special for Shabbat. And she'd give him the old coat. And when she'd go out of the house, she'd wear the old coat. And while he was working, he'd be inside. And that's what when he needed to for a formal occasion, they would be invited to a wedding. And they have in the Ukrainian Hasidim call it a yupa. A yupa is a long silk dress robe. And he said, my wife, give me the yupa. And she'd give him the old fur coat. And everything, everywhere he went, you'd think people would laugh at him, make fun of him. He goes to synagogue in the old fur coat. He goes to the market in the old fur coat. He goes to the wedding in an old fur coat. But what Rebbe Nachman tells us that he was full of joy and delight constantly. There was no break in his joy and no break in his delight. Now, let's go back to the work table, okay? The shoemaker, simple shoemaker, the simple one, he's working on a shoe. When he finished a shoe, the shoe would have three corners. The toe would be too pointed, and rather than the sole being tapered, it would look like a triangle. It would look like a triangle. And it was not symmetrical because he didn't have complete proficiency in his craft. And he would take the shoe in his hand and he'd say, what a magnificent shoe, Hashem, you help me build. And he would kiss the shoe. And he would take great pleasure in everything he did. And he said, my wife, look how beautiful and wonderful this shoe is. So it's honey. It's sweeter than sugar. Did you know that shoes could be sweet? This shoe is sweet. It's sweeter than honey. And she would ask him, if that's so, one time his wife came down to reality and she said to him, then why do other shoemakers get 3 gulden on a pair of shoes and you only take a half a taler? A half a taler, that's a 1.5 gulden, 1.5 gold coins. The other shoemakers got twice for his shoes. And he replied, what's that to me? That's the other person's business, and that's my business. That's where Rabbi Nachman says, Zeh maseh shelo, v'zeh maseh sheli. And that's how we play the trick. Zeh maseh she'elo, v'zeh maseh sheli. What's that to me? What's the other person's business? What does it mean to me? Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me. He knows this is his Emuna. This is his Emuna. And look at the lesson, the deep lesson in Emuna. Here we have that the simpleton, he was born with a simple intellect. The clever one was born with a completely fantastic intellect. He was born dexterous. He had ability. Simple one had 2 left hands. He didn't have he was as ambidextrous as the clever one. But whatever Hashem gave him, he was happy with. What is he teaching us? He says that even when his wife says, look, if your shoe is so great, how come the other shoemakers get twice of what they get 3 gold coins and you get a thaler, which is a gold and a half, a 1.5? That's their business, and this is my business. Not only that, they would make 2 pairs of shoes a day, and they'd get maybe 6 gold pieces a day. That was what they made. And he would make 1 pair of shoes, 1 shoe a day. So a pair of shoes in 2 days. So he was actually making a fourth of what other people were. He told his wife, put her right in her place. He says, that is their business, and this is my business. But look what he does. He doesn't argue with his wife. Oh, you're insulting me. No, he's got Emuna. He smiles at her, and he says, that's their business, and this is my business. What does it show with Emuna? He never speaks detrimentally about another person. You will never hear a word of slander from the simple one. You will never hear a word or hurtful word from the simple one. And if someone hurts him, he accepts it with Emuna, keeps on going. We'll see how he reacts to that. All people are insulting him right and left. They're making fun of him all day long. Okay? But he says, why should I talk about other people? They have their lives and I have my life. They have their business. And he says, let's just start calculating how much I earn with this shoe. from hand to hand. In other words, from my hand to hand to customer. Considering all the factors and the process of making the shoe, the leather cost me this much, the tar and the thread cost me this much, and the filling between the skins cost this much, and other things. And I come out of a whole profit of 10 grushin from hand to hand. 10 grushin is 10 cents. He's got a profit of 10 cents in a pair of shoe, even though he gets 1.5 gold coins when that's expensive. And he says, if I'm making a profit like that with 10 cents, we could buy a loaf of bread and a flask of water. Why should I complain? This is what they can afford. This is his whole salary. Could buy a loaf of bread and a flask of water. Why should I complain? So he was only happy and cheerful. He looked at the positive. He didn't look at what he lacked. He looked at what he had. He says, my sweetheart, we're not starving. We have something to put on our backs. We have something to eat. We have something to drink. But all the world, in the eyes of the world, the simple one was a laughing stock. Rebbe Nachman is talking about the world today. Talking about the world today. Look what people make fun of simple people. Simple people, and that's what they respect. Especially that they respect the highbrows, the clever, the intelligent, even though they're sad and they don't have a smile on their face and they're arrogant and they're trying back and forth to prove that they're better than other people. No, so you see the simple one. He's a laughing stock in modern society. Rebbe Nachman says prophetically. Okay, so the people, he gave them just what they wanted. He was a target where people could vent their, what are people that don't feel good about themselves, that they make other people a ladder. They step on bodies to go higher. And that's what they do. So they thought he was a lunatic. So they would intend to make fun of him every time they met him. And the simple man would say to them, you want to speak to me? Just no mockery. No mockery. And as soon as they answered him, oh no, can he listen to them? And then they promised that they wouldn't make fun. Then he would listen. But he prefaced, simple as telling something else. The Gemara tractate Nedarim says there's 4 types of people we should never talk to, and 4 types of people that we should never be. We should never take people, the ones who say Lashon Hara, the ones who slander. We should never speak to liars, the ones that can't tell the truth. We should never speak to Leitzanim, the ones that make jokes about other people. And we never speak to Chanfanim, the ones who make lying flattery. Flattery, it's not when you tell somebody, oh, you look nice to make them feel good. It's when you tell an evil person, oh, you're such a wonderful person, because you're afraid of them. That's flattery according to Torah. So what Rebbe Nachman is showing us now, that the simple one, morally, ethically, he's light worlds above everybody. And he says, okay, you want to speak to me? Fine. No tomfoolery, no evil speech. Are you really? You're willing? You have a clean tongue? Because if you don't have a clean tongue, I'm not going to listen. Yeah. And this itself, they made fun of that. Because he was telling, he was innocent, he was simple, and he didn't want to listen to their witticisms because it was all evil. And he would say to them, they make fun of me. He says, so okay, no, look how he would answer a clever person. He'd say, why are you making fun of me? Because you think you're more clever than I am, right? So wait a second, if I am such a fool in your eyes, and you're more clever than me, is that your claim to fame, that you're more clever than a fool? Okay, maybe you should go to someone distinguished and try and compare yourself to him. But you're doing something really stupid. In other words, he would tear a person apart with his simple truth and logic. You're making fun of me? That I'm simple? You're calling me a fool? So that means you think you're better than I am. Wonderful. So now, this is your praise? That you're a little bit better than a fool? And people were really embarrassed that they'd walk away. Okay, now we're now coming back to our next chapter in the clever and the simple one, because the clever one is making his homecoming. He's now, after years, we're about maybe 10, 12 years down the road, they're both 30. The simple one is married. And you got to remember, the simple one, he continued, his father left him the mansion. He still has the house. He owns this nice house. Father didn't give him any money. But with working, they're making enough to subsist. They have bread every day, and they have water every day. And meanwhile, there's a commotion in the town. The clever one is coming back to town. The clever one who traveled around the world, and he's coming with great pomp and sophistication. This is like the returning dignitary. And the simple man, he also came to his long-lost friend to greet him with great joy. And he said to his wife, quick, my wife, give me the yuppah. He wants the silk coat for this wonderful occasion. So she gives him the pelts. She gives him the old fur coat. Okay, I'm going to go and greet my dear friend. So she gave him the pelts, and he ran to greet him. Now the clever one was riding pompously in a horse-drawn carriage with gold trim, and the simple man came to greet him and welcomed Joyce with great love. He says, my dear brother, how are you? I miss you so much. Blessed is God for bringing you and giving me the privilege of seeing you. Look how respectful he is to his friend, and how honest. It's simple. He respects everyone and his friend. But the clever one, he comes back. The entire world is nothing for him. So now he looks at his former friend, the simple one, and if the whole world is insignificant, then all the more the simpleton, the Tom. Rabbi Nachman reminds us Tom. Just like remember Rabbi Nachman reminds with what we call it, with very sarcastically, every time he rhymes, he's a philosopher and he's intelligent. Every time Rabbi Nachman says, he says a Tom. Rebbe Nachman doesn't say pashut. Pashut is a word for simple. Rebbe Nachman says a Tom. Tom is innocent, the innocent one. Is innocent. And this innocence, Rebbe Nachman is talking about holiness, because his modesty, his humility is holy. He is far, we're going to see. We're going to see he is immersed in holiness, and we'll see where his holiness is going to take him. The clever one is immersed in arrogance, and we'll see where his arrogance take him. So now arrogance, as we know, is dark side, because Hashem says he and the arrogant person cannot dwell in the same universe. But humility, what does the Torah say about Moses? That Moses was the most humble man to ever walk the face of the earth. Moses was closer to Hashem than anybody ever walked the face of the earth. Humility is what enables a person to be close to Hashem. So since the Tom, the simple one, is so humble, he's very close to Hashem, his holiness. And now the clever one, he's already so arrogant, and Kochi Vosem Yadi says the power of my right hand. He doesn't see Hashem. He is not aware of Hashem. He doesn't know Hashem. It's all this philosophy in his brain. He thinks that's king. Okay. So meanwhile, their fathers had died, and their fathers died during the time that the clever one was traveling the world. And their houses were left as an inheritance. They didn't leave them any money because they lost their money. But the simple one who remained local moved into his father's house and claimed his inheritance. Look what happens with his simple mind, his innocence. He learns a trade early, even though it was difficult for him. He marries early, and he stays at home in the village, and he inherits his father's home. So he's got a beautiful roof over his head. But the clever one had been in foreign countries, and there had been no one to take care of the house, no one to receive the house, the inheritance. So the clever man's house became ruined, and it was lost. Nothing remained of it. Animals roamed in it, the thieves inside it just completely dilapidated, completely ruined, and it was a total loss. So he didn't have anywhere to live. So the clever one had no house to enter when he arrived, and he traveled to an inn, but he was so anguished there because if the inn in Rome and the inn in Paris wasn't up to his standards, what's the inn in the shtetl, in the village in Poland? It's not going to be up to his standards. So look what we see here. Look what we see here. The clever one with all his philosophy, he doesn't have a wife. He hasn't even started a life. He's got all these professions, and what has he done with them? And now even inheritance is lost. He's got nowhere, he's got a roof over his head. And the simple one, with his simple innocence, he's got a wife, he's got a roof over his head, he's got a livelihood. So the simple one now found himself a new occupation, a new time to occupy his time. He would constantly run from his house to the clever one and love and joy, and so what are you lacking in this hostel, in this inn? And he would bring him. And he noticed that the clever man was suffering from lodgings. So what did the simple man say to the clever man? He said, my brother, come live with me in my house. Stay with me. I'll gather all my belongings in one bundle, and you could have my entire house at your disposal. He takes his wife and all their possessions, puts them in a little corner, and he gives this one single guy the whole house. Now, who could be arrogant enough to take a person out of his bedroom and to take over the whole house? Oh, no, you could stay in this one little corner. So he moved to the house and stayed with us. This was agreeable. This was agreeable. How can you see the arrogance has no awareness, no feeling for anyone other than himself? So still, the simple one is always happy. The clever one is full of suffering. For he left behind a reputation of being a wonderful sage, an artist, and a great doctor. Okay, he's got this great reputation. So now a nobleman comes to him and ordered him to make a gold ring. So he made him this nobleman in Poland, made a wonderful ring and etched out engravings in amazing ways, something that would have brought high price in Paris or in Rome. And he engraved in a tree that was a total marvel. The nobleman came and he says, I'm sorry, I don't like the ring. The clever one was devastated. He says, what do you mean? If this was in Madrid, Spain, this would be an amazing, this would go and they take this ring and put it in a museum. It's $1 million ring. And similarly, one time a great nobleman came and brought a rare, precious gem from different lands. And he told him, he says, I heard you're an expert gem cutter. So he asked him to make it engraved. He showed him another nobleman's image on an engraved gem. He says, I want you to imitate this image and engrave this on my gem. Okay, so he did that. And he did it precisely, the clever one, precisely exact image, except he made a tiny little mistake that the customer couldn't understand. But he knew that even though he was the only one that saw, the neighbor took the gem. And this time the nobleman, he loved it. He loved the work. But the clever man has great agony because he knew he made a little mistake. And as smart as I am, he said to himself, this mistake shouldn't have happened. But hey, sir, your customer is delighted. Before, he was so proud of his work and his customer didn't like it. Now his customer is delighted, but he knows that it wouldn't, in Spain, that the expert gem cutters would notice the mistake. Same thing in his physician's career, in his doctoring, he suffered as well. We see what he's doing. No matter what he does, he suffers. Either his client his customer isn't happy, and he is, or else he's happy and his customer is not, when that brings him also anguish. There's nothing the way it likes it. Nothing is perfect. And juxtaposed to the simple one, where everything is fine in his life. Everything is fine. So in his medicine, he suffered as well. When he would come to an ill person and gave him treatments, he knew clearly that these treatments, they should let the person live. But patient died from his treatment. So the public said he died because of the clever doctor. And the clever doctor said there was no chance he could live anyway. I was trying to save his life. But sometimes he gave an ill person treatments, and the ill person became healthy. And the public says, oh, it was by chance. It was by chance. Could have been him. So he's always filled with pain. Either we do damage to a person, he'd be blamed. The public blame is because he's a lousy doctor. And when he would cure the thing, I said, no, it would have been cured anyway. He never got credit. And this killed him. Take an arrogant person that doesn't get the prestige and the honor, the credit, the respect that he thinks he deserves. So when he needed a garment, he summoned the tailor, and he took pains till he brought him the exact garment to make his specifications according to his knowledge of fashion. Remember, he was an apprentice of fashion, and he knows about that. And the tailor understood the directions and made the garment just as the clever one wanted, except on one lapel, one corner of a lapel, it wasn't exactly what he wanted. In other words, the shape was not exactly what he wanted. So the clever one suffered great anguish from this because he knew himself that even though here in Poland they consider him handsome, if someone would perceive him in the south of Spain, they'd laugh at him. So he would be a laughing stock. In Europe, I'd be a laughing stock and always look like an imbecile. So he was always full of suffering. We're going to stop right here. Next week, we're going to pick it up with an interaction with the clever one, the simple one. So with Hashem's help, next week we're going to continue on with the story. And the story may take us another week or another two, but we can see, we look inside, Rebbe Nachman is teaching us a great lesson about Emuna. Emuna, the barometer of Emuna, Rebbe Nachman tells us, is for one to be satisfied with his or her lot in life. And that's it. That's how we test ourselves if we have Emuna. We know that always things could be better. Now you can strive for better. People say, well, I can't strive for better. Yeah, sure, you could pray for something to be better. But in the meanwhile, thank Hashem for everything you have. And by thanking Hashem for everything you have, Hashem should give you many reasons to say thank you. Okay, so look forward to seeing everybody next week. Bezat Hashem.